dads. And so today I'm thrilled to present to you again Mr. J. Michael Hall. He is the founder of Strong Fathers, Strong Families. He is the husband of one wife and the father of two sons. And so I'm just going to hand it over to Mike and let him take over because he has more interesting information than I do. My information is all about him.
Yeah, that's why I have more interesting information. You talk about me, I'll talk about something else.
There you go.
All right, let me do
Mike.
a couple of things. Thank you, Jaded. So let me go here. It's always interesting when you have to go through and do the Zoom because you're spotlighting yourself. And your whole life you were taught not to spotlight yourself, and yet that's what we're doing. So last week, so the first week that we were together, we talked about the strengths of moms and the strengths of dads, how they work together, how sometimes they don't work together, and that's okay, right? And then last week we talked about what the positive impacts are when dads are engaged. And we did not do as much social stuff, and I say social stuff as far as those other impacts, because we spend so much time at Strong Fathers working on academics. But I also know that as we talk about those things, we get to explain why that happens, and so we can apply that in lots of different ways. I think also when we really look at how we're doing this, when we talk about fatherhood, the blessing and the curse of what we have done in the past is that we've talked about the fact that when dads aren't engaged, we've got more juvenile crime, we've got more teen pregnancy, we've got more dropouts. So that stuff is pretty well known. What we know is as we talk about how this impacts academics, you can begin to explain why the other stuff works too. We see that it happens, but and the reason I think I've had to kind of come down through all that research, and not just because that's what I spend my time doing, but again, if you were on the discussion earlier as we got started, I've been doing this 20 years, and I can't tell you how many times I've had to defend the idea of engaging fathers. 20 years ago, just the idea of not just the how, but the why was a really big, why would you want to do that? Dads aren't that valuable. Dads are so much hard work, or dads are dangerous, all these things. And so what we know is I've had to defend, and dig up the research to show what we were seeing, to say, this is why we have less teen pregnancy. This is why we have these things going on. So man, probably 10 years ago now, I wrote a manual for the feds, and as a principal, and even some of the work I was doing in fatherhood, I was working with abstinence programs, sex ed abstinence programs. And they said, can you help us? We need you to write a manual about abstinence and father engagement and or parent engagement, and then also single parents, grandparents, foster parents, those things. And so, yeah, I said, I can do that. And what I learned in looking at all that research was that if you want to be abstinent, just write a paper about being abstinent, because I was in the books all summer. So I'll let you take the rest of that. But what I had to do was look at down to those finite levels of why that was going on. And the reason we had to do that was not many people understood the value of that. They could feel it. You could see it when you saw it, but why is it that way? Is it just these really super great dads or dudes that are doing the job? And the truth is, no, when dads kind of any background do these things, really simple things, kids have much better outcomes. So that's kind of what we did last week. And, again, I want to kind of touch on some of the things, but about why that goes on. But you guys are in practice. You guys have things to do. And you've been very patient with us to go through and talk about, I wouldn't say it's ethereal, because I think it's very important. That whole first week, like I said, I told you, was you need to understand this so you can understand the research, and then understand how the research and the relationship fits into practice, right? Kind of fits into reality. And what I'm doing here is writing my next chapter, because I just realized the relationship and the research equals reality. So look for that at a bookstore near you sometime. But those are the things that we have talked about. And I want to talk about principles for engaging fathers, that regardless of how you're engaging fathers, we want you to do that. And so these are the three principles that we're going to go over. But while I'm thinking about it, one of the things I want to do in chat is number one, because I need to do my housekeeping. If your name is not the name of the account, type your name in on chat plus here. If your name is actually the name of the account, then, like mine says Strong Fathers. That's not my name, even though people yell it out in airports sometimes. Strong Fathers. But type in your name and then put here. The other thing I want you to type in after you do that, click on that, so we'll have a record of everybody's attendance. Or as we say in church, a ready recollection of your attendance. You know how we say the same thing over and over in church, back when we used to go to church. So now in the chat, write in how you are interacting with Father. Like, what is your role, professional role, and how do you play into fathers, or how do fathers play into your role? Like if you're a facilitator, if you're a minister, if you're a caseworker, if you're child protective, if you're a counselor, whatever you are, just put that in of how you are working with dads, or why is this of interest and or concern to you. So trying to find my chat. Yeah, and so some of you are funded and are directed to work with moms, and yet dads are part of that. That used to be the case in Head Start. Head Start was really a mom's program, and they realized they need to get more dads engaged. And now they've gone to, again, over the last 20 years, if we're serving the child, then we have to have both parents in the picture if any chance we can do that. And our job is to go around and say it's not only possible, but it's quite practical to do it. So very good. Team program coordinator, Dads at Hope, assessment, all kind of great stuff. So let's talk about, because some of you work with dads on the periphery. In other words, they're part of your work. Some of you are directly having to impact and or be impacted by fathers in your program. And so there's an issue of recruitment. And I don't like to call it recruitment because I want to get as many dads in the door, dads into the program that you're doing as possible. And so it has this recruitment effort, but these principles are going to get you, again, that foundation of that. And so our 3 principles of father engagement are: fathers are important to a child's development. That's what we covered a lot of last week. And then fathers are and can be present in a child's life. So I've showed you the picture, I think the first week, of Adam Savage, who was on Mythbusters. And I seriously get confused with him sometimes. I get confused as him sometimes, but people will stop me in the airport, like, aren't you? I'm like, not the dude. Got a lot more money, a lot more hair. But I don't know if that's true anymore. But the myth is that fathers don't want to be around, or fathers are too hard to reach, or whatever. And so fathers are and can be present in a child's life is not a myth. It is the truth, and we'll talk about that some. And then fathers will engage in the right programs. So most of you here are engaged in some sort of programming, no matter what, for lack of a better term. And so what I want you to know on this 3rd principle is they will come around. There are things that you could do to get more dads in on a more consistent basis. So even what we talked about with what we're doing here today, if we were to try to cram all this into what would be 5 or 6 hours during a day, not only is it better to break that information out, but it's better to give you guys some time, because nobody wants to sit in front of the computer for 6 hours. So what we knew was there's got to be a better way to do a one-day conference virtually than doing it all in one day. Same thing goes when we talk about engaging dads in programs. What people have done is taken whatever old model they've been given, or whatever old model they've been taught, and they try to put that in a place that does not work for dads, or necessarily in the same way. So we're going to try to touch on that. And so I wanted you guys to know kind of where we're headed with those ideas. And so when we talk about fathers are important to a child's development, like I said, we covered a ton of that last week. But there's so much great research out there. Now, there's not as much research as we would hope, because it's kind of a new field. The research that I quote will be the same research somebody else quotes, because there's only so much of this body of research that's going on. We're actually being evaluated. Strong Fathers, Strong Families is being evaluated by Annie E. Casey Foundation on the impact of our program in schools, which we're excited about that for our program. But we're also excited because we hope that informs other people that even if you don't do it exactly like we do, what we do that we think works, that we hope is proven with this evaluation, is a principle that will work as well. I want to show you this real quick. So fathers are and can be present in the life of a child's life. So I work in the schools in Van, Texas, Van ISD, just west of Tyler, down the interstate. And this is a dad. His child at this time was, I think, a third grader, fourth grader. The dad lived and worked in San Antonio. The kid lived in Van. And we did 4 events that year in Van. And this dad drove middle of the week, morning, evening, didn't matter. This dad came to all 4 programs. And it made the drive every time. 2 years ago now in El Paso, we had a dad come from Minneapolis to be able to bring your dad to school day in El Paso. And everybody's like, whoa, that's great. And I said, anybody else? And this guy said, Vladnikov. And I run around to West Texas a little bit, and I'm like, where's Vladnikov? And I said, where's Vladnikov? He goes, Russia. He had jumped a C-130 airplane. He was a military contractor, was on the port in the sea in Russia, basically, and jumped a C-130 to Ramstein, depending on what when you were in the service. And then Ramstein to New Jersey, Delta flight from New Jersey to El Paso. To be there on a Friday and was going back on a Monday. So he came in for the weekend from Russia. And so we know that when kids are involved and dads will show up. I had a dad this past year show up in Winona, Texas, the big city of Winona, Texas, in East Texas, and actually came from Djibouti, was on a naval base in Djibouti, which I didn't even know we had a naval base in Djibouti. And I really like telling everybody this story because I'm like a 12-year-old because I get to say Djibouti all the time. But he was there and actually made special arrangements to get back from overseas for his pre-K kids, bring your dad to school day. And so dads will show up to programs, but we've got to talk about why. They're present in a kid's life. They're around. Some of you watched my TED Talk where we talked about 75% of the kids that have non-custodial dads see their dad at least within the year. And our practical experience is that these dads are seeing their kids on a pretty regular basis. You'll have kids in school, kids in your program that say, I ain't got a daddy, but they see their real dad, their biological dad, 3 to 5 times a month. But they say, I ain't got a daddy because my daddy doesn't live in the home like other dads, or my dad ain't paying child support, so my mom said I ain't got no daddy. But they actually, when you talk to the child, they come in. Those of you that are involved in Head Start also know about the ghost dad. The ghost dad is somebody that is in the life of the child, maybe even within the home, but can't be the dad of record because then they don't qualify for Head Start. And I've had kids that bring their dad, and the dad says, I'm his uncle. And we're like, well, that's funny because the kid looks just like his uncle. And as the kid's running around the classroom, it's like, Dad, look over here. Dad, look over here. And we're like, okay, Uncle Dad. So we know about ghost dads. We know about stepdads. We know about other dads, father figures. But more dads, more biological dads that are connected to these kids are not only involved with these kids, but they're in there. When we talk about African-American fathers, everybody wants to go back to these statistics about how bad it is, about how many dads are not there. And there is a challenge in the community, except for the fact that research shows that Black fathers are actually more engaged with their younger children than any other ethnic group, more than white dads, regardless of economics, and maybe more so because of economics. More than Hispanic dads, more than Asian dads. And so a lot of those myths out there are that, dads are not available in the lives of kids. Particularly if you're a kid-based program, like, kind of we are at Strong Fathers. So, but you're in an agency, and one of your challenges is you're doing things to work with fathers for the sake of their children, for the better outcomes of the family. So you may be getting a dad job services, you may be getting a dad different services. But the dads are seeing their kids. So we worked with non-custodial dads in our, still is, focus class, Fathers Offering Children Unfailing Support, the 10-week class that I wrote like 15 years ago. And my co-author is still running the program in Dallas, Tarrant, and Collin County. And they're going gangbusters. But what we found was these guys were non-custodial dads, had issues with child support, but when given the opportunity, they were seeing their kids as regular as they could. They were doing all the work, We had dads that were signed up for the class that never showed. Those might be deadbeat dads. Most of the guys, though, are either dead broke or they're dead bolt, right? They've been locked out of the child's life, or they couldn't pay, and so they're told not to come around, or they felt like they couldn't come around. But more dads are out there, and I'll show you kind of how that works. So there are more we know about we talked about how they impact a child's development. Dads are and can be present when they're required and or requested and or invited. And then fathers, and this is, when you're doing family engagement stuff, families will engage in the right program. So the reason I can say this is, and I haven't done the numbers for this past year because it was kind of like, we're done. But last year, I only did almost not quite 80 programs. So we did 70 plus programs over the course of the school year. Bring your dads, and I mean, all over the country, math nights, science nights, all kind of things, Saturday programs. And out of those 70 programs, we averaged 140 families per program. Small districts, large districts, big communities, small communities. Across the ethnic spectrum, we had all Black schools, all Hispanic schools, super mixes of all sorts. I have a school in Fort Worth that had 58 languages actually represented there, not just on record. I kid you not. Sign in was a major challenge because so many families didn't speak English at whatever level. But they showed up and they came out for their kids. And so we know families will show up and they'll engage in the right program. So I tell you that because I want to invite you to think about what are the parts of our program that we need to change. And so the 3 keys that we build into any program, and these are principles, right? I've got all kind of things you can do, but these are principles. And it's got to be interactive, right? One of the things that I kind of hated that we've done to you the last couple of weeks is you've had to sit and get more than I cared to. But when it's virtual, that's one of our challenges. We're going to do a little bit more breakout here in a minute. But it's got to be interactive. We want to have that back and forth. Those of you that have been to my live programs, my in-person programs, know that we use rubber chickens, we use flip charts, we use all kind of things, and we've got to do it interactive. So when I'm working with dads, even in my 10-week class, we do these interactive group building activities to get dads to think, but also get dads to talk, which leads to not only better discussion, but better thinking on the part of our participants. So everything with men needs to be interactive. It needs to be relational. Now, ladies, you're thinking when you work with men, we're not relational because men don't relate like women, right? So when men get together, we don't do things the same thing as women are. Like Jeff and I have known each other, and even, of course, I got to shut up long enough for Jeff to say something to me. That's maybe his challenge. But when Jeff and I see each other on the camera on Zoom, we kind of, hey man, what? Hey, give a wave. You ladies, when you see each other, how are you? It's so good to see you. Oh, I like your top. Oh, look, you're at the beach, which is the new Zoom thing, right? You're at the mountains, you're at the beach, and you guys have all this interaction that men don't have. But you don't think men relate. Well, we relate, we just don't relate the same way. So you ladies do what I call the mom greeting or the lady greeting. Hey girl, what are you doing? You look so good. I love to see you. You're so cute. Da, da, da. And that's how you work. And that's what goes on, and that's fine. You need to understand, ladies, that when you ladies talk to other ladies, this is what we men hear. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not our frequency. Jeff and I see each other. Dave and I see each other. We guys are just, what's up? You see guys that know each other. We'll do what's up. And if they say what's up, that's a tight bond. That means like we grew up together. We coach T-ball together. We go to church together. We met each other in county. We have some kind of relationship where we can relate to each other. I see dads all the time. They got a first grade daughter. The other guy's got a first grade daughter, and there's so much like understanding. Like, dude, she has not stopped talking since we got in the car this morning. I know, right? Or we got to go sit with the friends, or all those things that happen when you have a first grade daughter, a third grade daughter, or a second grade son. It's like he still can't tie his shoes, or he can tie his shoes, but he ties them with his teeth. I don't know what the deal is. So you see that interaction between dads, but we don't relate the same way. You get ladies in a room, get them in a circle, say, how you feeling today? What's really going on in your heart? And 90 minutes later, you're done with a full box of Kleenexes, and you got to shut the meeting down because we have shared and shared and shared. Not a thing wrong with that. Very powerful stuff going on there. You get a bunch of dudes in a circle and say, how's your heart today? you might as well say, who wants to take your clothes off first? It's that uncomfortable for guys. So we'll relate, but we relate differently. If you have a fire, if I could build fatherhood programs, I would either have pickup beds on pedestals in the room where we just gathered around the pickup bed and just talk, because that's where men talk. If you don't believe so, go in the communities in which you work, see where men are. They're around a fire, they're around a pickup bed. If you really want to get them to talking, that's the best way to do it. There's other ways to do it as well, but man, that's automatic. So men will relate, but also they relate to their kids. Men will relate to their kids. So everything that we do at Strong Fathers is dad and kid. You guys don't always have that opportunity. We didn't have that opportunity in our focus class because not everybody had access to their kids. And so, but the power of that is we're doing kind of on-the-job training with that. But as we work with men, we want to talk to them about how they relate. So I worked with my dads in Singapore yesterday morning. And one of the questions that I had them ponder was, what would your kids say about you as a dad right now? If I said, what's your dad like? And that's a hard question. That's hard to face. So they came up with that. And I said, what would you want them to say in the days to come about you as a father? As they become adults, what would you want them to say? And then the last question was, we had a very small group, but I said, what do you got to stop doing or keep doing to get where you want to be? Like what they've said about you now, which could be really good stuff, but what you want them to say about you in the future, if you want that to happen, what do you got to do more of or do less of? That's relational stuff. And if men were given the opportunity and a safe place to do that, man, these guys talked all morning. It was fantastic. And then the last thing is relevant. Some of you have, for lack of a better term, kind of court-ordered classes. You have some incentives to get people in your class. But at the end of the day, we've got to be relevant, that even if we can get them in the door, can we get them to listen and engage in such a way because it means something to them, right? The reason we did the structure of our 10-week class the way we did was as we worked through and massaged that, we did 10-week sessions by the time we got that thing really honed in. But we changed it every time just a little bit because this had to go before this piece had to go before this. You got to do this way, you got to do this that way. So we had to do it that way, but we did that not only to have the right order, but to make it more relevant. We can't we've got to deal with the system that put them there before we deal with the other stuff they're dealing with, because any pain that dads feel, men in general, feel, they're going to go back to the externals that impact that, where we had to put the externals in their place externally. You can't control the courts. You can't control your ex-wife. You can't control, all these things. You can't control the economy. What are you going to do internally as a dad to do that? So you have to have that order, and that's what makes it relevant. So think about in your program, where you see in the relevancy, where you see the things that really resonate with people, and then where are the things that you kind of feel like you're required to do, or that's just what's been provided to you that's really not relevant. And so I want you to entertain that and think about that. So everything we do, put all the things you're doing in your programs through these three filters. Is it interactive? Is it relational? Is it relevant? And then this is our last thing. And I understand that your challenges are very much different than some of the things we do in schools, because we've tapped into how schools work. When you're in a bigger, broader community, when you've got some challenges with your constituency, we understand that. But we're very quick to blame our constituency for things that we're not doing. So, for example, when I started working with the Focus program here in Tarrant County, we had a guy that was kind of a jobs coach, kind of over, helping guys get jobs, and he was assigned to all of our guys. So we had 6 workforce centers around the county that he kind of had an office in. And so the idea was it's convenient for those guys to go in their own community and go meet with him. But he wouldn't be there when they got there. But he wasn't having to deal with the repercussions of that because we're so quick to blame our constituency. But as we sat down and talked to the dads, the stories we got over and over was like, I showed up at 2:00 and he wasn't there. I stayed till 2:30, he never showed, so I left. And then the report we're getting from the guy doing the work is he never showed, but he didn't tell us that he wasn't there at 2. And again, we had to challenge that. But we were so quick to go, yeah, and the guy that I worked with, the guy that was doing this work, he said, these guys don't make their appointments. And I said, if they could make appointments, they wouldn't need your help. If these guys could consistently make their appointments, they wouldn't need our services. That's one of the challenges we have to face. How do we deal with that? So we finally had workforce put him in one place. And even though guys might have to catch a ride or catch a bus to go see him, he was always in that same spot. And so our actual appointments and appointments that were met went way up. And so we began to realize it wasn't, our constituency had their own problems, right? Had their own challenges. But we're so quick to blame our constituents and not take in what can we do about it in our program that makes this, more effective. And so if parents aren't showing up for your program, understand it's not the parents, it's your program. There's a way that we could do this. And it may be a lot of work. It may be really hard work. Our work in schools has been long-term, so it's kind of been a little piece at a time. And this thing is really dialed in. Now we got to change it completely, because now we're going to go virtual. So now we got to figure out what brings people online virtually, what gets them there, what keeps them there. But we're going to have to do that hard work again, because we can't just say, hey, we offered it. Where are they? What do they know how to work Zoom? Did we do it at the right time? Did they have the right resources? Did we do things in an engaging way? So I would challenge you to think about that, where we know the challenges of the people you're working with, but we've got to understand, we've got to meet those challenges to help these dads out, families out in general. So this is one of my favorite pictures I've ever taken, period, because I don't have grandbabies. After I have grandbabies, this picture is going to go way down the list. I have some cute sons, well, kind of, but this is one of my favorite pictures, particularly about our work. This is at the Head Start in Plano, as the sign says. And let's do some interaction. In chat, tell me what you notice about this picture. Yeah, Spanish on the sign. Yeah, big trucks. This is only one of the pictures. If you go behind that dump truck, there's that same picture behind it. I mean, there was actually a concrete truck there. Like the dude had a load of concrete, picked up the load, and then came to Head Start to be with his kid that day and then take off. And the reason I bring that up is because people will say, well, our dads work, or, we can't work with these guys at certain times of the day. And I think there's some truth to that. But these guys all made time for their kids to be there because it was relevant to them. So we had 140 kids in the Head Start program. We had 108 dads, or 108 families represented, and understanding that out of those 108, some of them have more than one of those 140 kids. And so it is quite possible. It is something that works, but we wanted you to see, this is one of my kind of proof text, if you will, of, no, these guys will show up. I mean, we see it all the time in our schoolwork, but that's not what you guys are doing. So we need to talk about, okay, how do you get dads in? How do you keep them in? What gets them through the door the first time? So on our 10-week class, let's say you got a list of 100 guys that were supposed to be in that class based on their probation, because they're on probation for child support issues. So let's say we had 100 guys, or let's say we had 40, because we never had 50 guys show up. Let's say we had 40 guys on the list, 20 would show up to class. There's this other 20, they're like, I don't care if you arrest me, whatever, I'm checked out, come get me. Maybe a deadbeat guy, maybe not, but we didn't know. We know deadbeats were in that group, but we didn't know that all 40 or all 20 of the 40, of that group were deadbeats, but they didn't show. And so there's a compliance issue. There's who knows what other challenges they might have had. But of the 20 guys that showed, 82% of them made it through the 10 weeks. And that was our goal, was to make that number as high as possible. The cool part about even that 18% that didn't graduate the 10 weeks, not quite half, but about 40-45% of those guys that didn't graduate were employed by the end of that 10 weeks. So that's why they didn't make the 10 weeks. And which is fine, because dude, if you got a job, go get your job, get your bills paid. And what we found was part of their participation in class was, I really need to get onto this. And when they got onto it and the job took them away from class, the cool part most of the time was like, dude, I hate to miss class, but I got to work. And we're like, no, that's what you're here for. And so, what are the barriers? What are those things that we're talking about? And so we had to look at timing. We let our dads bring dinner, because that's one of the things they were trying to, figure out. We said, it can't be stinky food. I don't know what that is, but we said, we'll know it when we see it. So let's talk about barriers for a minute. Matter of fact, let's do this. You see the one that's a work schedule. In chat, why are dads not showing up? Why are you having trouble, if you're having trouble, getting dads to show up at your program? I'm gonna take that sip of drink so it's the pause is not so awkward. Why are dads not showing up? Everybody's like, oh, my dad show up. Or, oh, come on, Cindy. That was already on there. Your social services, yeah. Negative interaction with moms, work in school. Video games. Busy. So we see pride, and we'll talk about that in a second too. Anything else? So let's talk. Let me touch on pride for a minute, because so going back to the social service model where I've worked, guys are court ordered in child support court to come to this class. When we first started, we were already in the mix of guys that were kind of backlogged in the court system. They'd been on probation for a good while before we got a hold of them. So as we worked up through the class and kind of got caught up on cases, if you will, they began to do an orientation, and we showed up at the orientation to tell them about the class. That really increased kind of a trust level, because we kind of realized what we needed to tell dads, what we needed to talk about, the fact that there's no shame in this, that we, all these things. But that piece of being in the orientation really helped. But what we found as guys came in, like we wrote this for the state of Texas. We did this class and we wrote the curriculum for the state of Texas, and they shelved it because they were told they needed a more gender neutral fatherhood program. Okay, whatever. I don't even know what that is. But and this was 15 years ago, that it had to be a gender neutral fatherhood program. I asked them about their gender neutral breastfeeding program, but they wouldn't answer my email. Did I tell you, Cindy and Jada, why I don't work on grants sometimes? They don't always like my emails for that. But we wanted to call the first session Pissed Off 101, because that's just what it was, right? Like, that's just, everybody's mad because they're showing up. And as we went to talk through this stuff, we let them kind of vent and talk about it. And they said, and you send me this flyer that says I'm a bad dad. And we're like, oh, wait up. What? We didn't say that. Yeah, you did. It's on the flyer. Like, no, we don't say that you're a bad dad on the flyer. We say nothing about you being a bad dad on the flyer, nor would we say that in this class. And they said, yeah. And we actually had a laminated copy after a while of the flyer, and I said, tell me where it says. This is the flyer you got, right? Yeah. Where does it say you're a bad dad? It didn't. But they felt like, because they were ordered for this class, that everybody thought they were a bad dad. So when we look at that pride, there is a pride issue, but it goes back to what you said, Jeff, on that fear of social service. We know the stigma that comes with social service for anybody. We're trying to help you. We think you need some help, whether you think you need help or not, or you've been ordered to get help, whether you understand there's a problem or not. All those things that come into social service work. And now we're telling this guy, you're ordered to do that. So there is a pride issue, but the other thing is, I'm doing the best I can. I do love my kids, but I'm having trouble paying my bills. I do love my kids, but I don't get to see them because mom won't let me in, or all these other things. I told you about the focus class was involved in the American Humane Society grant, or American Humane Association grant, where kids that were being, moms were losing their parental rights, and nobody was looking for the dad before they adopted the kid out. Like, they didn't even consider the dad's parental rights, because they felt like if mom was this bad of a train wreck, if you will, then dad must be two train wrecks, which could be the case, but most of the time wasn't. Like, if mom had been addicted to something, maybe dad had been addicted, but he was no longer addicted, had gotten clean, didn't even know where his kid and wife were, because they had, payed out. But the assumption was, if mom's bad, dad's worse, so there's no reason to even find the dad. And so you got to understand, when dad walks into the building, how he's treated. We talk about in schools, how it looks when a man walks into the building. It's much different than when a woman walks into the building. And as much school violence that we've had in the last 20 years, only one case in all of those things have been perpetrated by an outside adult. Sandy Hook, there was one besides Sandy Hook. There was one that was at an Amish school in Indiana, but the other one was he's 20, and psychotic, it's Sandy Hook. But other than that, it's all been with inside. There's not a bunch of men coming into public schools to try to hurt kids, but as soon as a man comes in, he's seen as a perpetrator as opposed to a parent. Same thing in our social service. I send dads to the WIC program. And people that run the WIC program, they've gotten better. We've done some education. But they're like, this is for women, infant, and children. Well, I have an infant. Yeah, but you're not a woman. Yeah, but if the kid's not registered and the dad's a parent, then he gets to register his kid for those services. But yet they will ask, where's mom? It's like, it doesn't matter. I'm the parent here. I'm a parent that's signing up my kid. If the kid's not already signed up, I can sign my kid up. And so there is a pride issue that is real. And then there's these other issues of fear, of how are you looking at me? How do you think about me? Same thing when we talked about our guys coming out of divorce court or out of child support court. So here's a guy that's lost his family or perhaps just lost his kids and has got to pay money that he may or may not have. He's lost custody of these kids. And if the mom has something happen to her and she breaks down crying, everybody's like, yeah, I understand that. That's so sad, or it must have been so bad. If a man breaks down crying, because it's the same thing, they've been escorted out of court. They've been looked at as, look how weak this guy is, or look how frail this guy is, or look, this guy's psychotic, because I've heard it said. Moms don't get escorted out of court when they're crying, but we've seen dads escorted out of court when they're crying just the same way. The other thing is a dad wants to throw chairs. A dad wants to just explode with anger, but he knows if he does, he's going to jail. He's already looked bad on the court maybe, or it feels like everybody's looking at him wrong. So he's not going to blow up. So he gets his granted, he gets his stoic look. And then everybody says, look, that SOB doesn't even care. And that's not always the story on either side. So we have that of when people come in the door and how they react. And so we have to understand, and I just wanted to touch on that pride, because pride is real. And I don't want to do that, but I don't meet dads that are so proud they don't want to do well by their kids. They just don't want me to think that I don't know anything about what they're doing. But when they find themselves in a trusted environment, they will tell you, I just really don't know what to do here. But they do know what to do in other places. So we kind of discount it as you know everything or you know nothing. And none of us as parents know everything, and none of us as parents know nothing. I talked about working with T. Barry Brazelton out of the Brazelton Touchpoints. And one of the tenets of Touchpoints is parents are the expert on their child, which is really hard for us in social service when we see how many challenges are going on. This person is not an expert. No, this parent lacks capacity. Mom or dad may lack the capacity to keep the lights on, lack the capacity to figure out how to fix dinner every day, lack the capacity to deal with their depression, anxiety, mental illness, lack of intelligence. I mean, what happened to them in school? What is their cognitive ability? They're still parents, but that doesn't mean they're highly functioning adults. But it doesn't mean that they're not they don't know some things about their kids, even though they don't have the capacity to do all the other things that are required of parenting. So we have to understand that these guys are experts on their own kids at one level or another, but we're not treating them that way when they come in the door. So I wanted to touch on that. So let's talk about work schedule. We got guys working nights. We got guys working days. We got guys working 2 shifts. So when are we going to offer our programs? Those of you that are doing 5 weeks, 10 weeks, 6 weeks classes, that's a little tougher because not every guy has a standard schedule. What we did with our 10-week class in Tarrant County was we started at 7. And even though because we wanted to get guys, back out, because if you go 8 to 10, nobody wants to be there. It's just so late. But 7 was early enough, but that's why we let them bring their dinner, because to get home and changed, commuting around Dallas, Fort Worth, to get home and change and eat something and then come to class by 7 was a pretty Herculean feat. But if you could just go from work, go do what you needed to do, maybe grab a meal and even bring it to eat during class, again, no cabbage, no broccoli, please, then it worked out. Because I want you in class, I'm not worried about whether you're eating or not. I want you here to listen. And that's one of the things that kept our numbers up. So work schedule is one thing. What we do in schools is our morning programs are actually more popular, more highly attended than evening programs, because all they've got to do is take off a little bit of time of work, and we give them plenty of notice to make that happen. So the same thing goes. You can't tell a dad or a mom on a Monday about a Thursday program, morning or evening, because as much as we know our families, particularly our families in poverty, don't plan, they still got to have some kind of planning. They still got to have some kind of notice. So when you're talking about work schedule, plenty of notice. We're going to run this class every morning. We're going to run this class every night. We're going to do it every day at 7:30, whatever. You know, and then this goes back to our other thing where we talk about, well, dad stands off. So one of the barriers is language that we'll talk about in a minute. And so there's the language that if you don't speak Spanish, then in Texas, you're not going to impact as many families. If you don't have somebody on staff that speaks Spanish fluently or can help, you're not going to be able to serve those families in the same way. At the same time, that being said, we'll talk about some solutions to that in a minute. But the same thing goes for dads. Just what we did here, first week was, what do you want your child to be? Most moms, most females put happy. Most dads put successful or responsible. We both love our kids the same way, but in different ways, right? So we have different ideas about what the future looks like for our kids. Dads want their kids to be happy, but not before they're successful. Moms want their kids to be successful, but they more than likely want them to be happy first. And so dads, we have to speak a different language. If you're going to talk about his pride, which is a real deal, why would you want to change the actual nature of what makes a man get up every day and do the great things that he does? When you could impact that by going into that, by leaning into the pride and saying, you know, we know you want to do this for your kid. We know that you love your kid. We know what you're proud of or want to be proud of. We want to help you do that and continue to be proud of that. As opposed to, they're always so prideful. Okay, but what are you doing to help them get over that hurdle if pride won't let them be a part of your program? So you've got to speak his language. When you go, those of you that may be home visitors, everything we do in home visits really, really always has been and is focused on moms, right? Matter of fact, Jeff and I, that was the PAT conference, wasn't it? Jeff and I had been at other conferences. I'd known Jeff before, but this conversation that got us here started at a PAT conference. And it's a real challenge in PAT because it is built for women. It's mainly female staff. But when we go in, the dad stands at the back, and there's a lack of trust, particularly among our immigrant families. The dad is worried about what the woman is going to be told about him, right? Because there may be some struggles. There may be some domestic issues. And if there's real issues, we've got to address it. Please understand, I would never discount that at all. But when a couple has challenges, which we all do, those are real challenges. What he's worried about is, am I going to get a fair shake in the raising of this kid? I don't know what I'm doing, but nobody's here to help me. And when they come to help me, they help me like they're trying to help her. And I don't even speak that language. I don't understand it, or that's not my thing. You know, when we talk about baby massage, which is really good for babies, but we don't tell dads that it's okay to play, it's okay to roughhouse, even with a young child in a safe way, then we're not speaking his language. When we talk about, you know, he's pulling up on the couch, you know, if all we talk about is safety and we don't talk about how strong his son or daughter is, then it's different. Well, that's pride. That's fine. That's what drives a dad to do the great things. Now, we don't want him to have the world champion puller-upper, but that's what impacts the dad and how he's going to come into your program because you're speaking his language. Dad, look at how strong that dude is. Man, he's going to be, look at that. Look at him pulling up already. Another thing that I learned from Brazelton and I thought was so good was using the child's behavior as your language. Dad, look at how he looks at you when you're talking to me. Dad, look at how he grabs you by the shoulders when you pick him up. Dad, look at how he puts his arms up for you just like he does for mom. You know, and or if a dad comes in, instead of acting like he's not going to know anything, treat him like he knows it. And if he doesn't know it, because some moms don't know where I can find this paperwork, what our monthly bill, whatever you're asking for in an intake, don't treat him like he's an idiot. We have a lot of dads that come into schools and they have to lean over to their kid and say, what's your teacher's name? And so many people are like, oh, I can't believe it. But I see a smaller percentage, because we have a smaller percentage of moms attending dad events, but we have almost the same percentage of those moms asking their kids the same thing. You know, and when my kids were I knew who my kids' teachers were, but I didn't know what classes they taught. And, you know, when they're in secondary. But we have to understand we're trying to engage parents, but when they show up, they're not as engaged as we want them to be. That's why we have the program. You have dads and moms showing up to your program that are showing up for your services, and we get frustrated that they don't know how to do these things. If they could do those things, they wouldn't need your services. Our services are built to help them develop capacity. So we should not be against them when they don't have the capacity to be in a program to develop that capacity. So we have to have that grace, and we have to have that empathy for our constituents. And I get how tiring it is, and I get how it wears you out, but that's why we're there. That's why we're doing what we're doing. And so we have to work on that. So we speak his language, and that language is, what are your desires for your kid? What are your fears? And fears are hard to talk about with a guy, but not once you develop trust. Once you develop a basic level of trust, these guys are really quick to talk about that. And so we got to speak dad's language. So we also talk about the barrier of an absent father. Those of you that are working with moms that are trying to engage the fathers from the program, the dads, again, may not be in the same household, but they're around. This is hard for people to hear because some of you, I even know on this call, have dealt with this, but there is no such thing as a fatherless child. It's biologically impossible. But even if the dad is not there or has never been there, there's a missing piece in that child, and the kid feels it. So if there's if there's a fatherless child, then they would just go on and not feel that loss. They would not feel that emptiness. And so we don't have fatherless kids. That being said, that means there's a father or father figure out there that not only the kid needs and wants, but that we need to address. And if your program's not for doing that, I understand. But if that's a plus or a bonus to what you're doing, please understand the kids know where their father is or the person they want to play that role. Let's say dad's incarcerated, never been around. Dad was there for conception and was not there for anything else. Right? So the kid may not actually know the dad. But even if the dad is non-custodial and the dad's been around at all, the kid knows where dad is, knows how to get in touch with them. So we've used kids in the past to say, who would you like to bring? Because sometimes they don't want to bring their dad. Sometimes dad's not safe or dad's never been around. So who would you like to bring? I'd like to bring granddad. I'd like to bring my uncle. That's fine, but kids know where they're at. So we talked about giving notice. This is a school flyer, so I know it's different. But as you're reaching out, you got to say, hey, our first class meets, like this says, October 11th. You got to let them know that. This is a picture from that you saw earlier. By giving notice, people are able to make plans to be there. You can't tell a guy on a Monday that, hey, you're required to be at a class on Thursday. It's not fair to them, and they already feel like you're not working with that. So let's talk about solutions for language and trying to be interactive again. Go back to chat. We know that Spanish is an issue. You're also there in the Beaumont area, so we know that Cajun may be an issue. I'm not really sure. I don't know how many translators you have, but sometimes you need a translator for that. You've got to have a translator for that. But what are the languages you guys are dealing with in your area? Vietnamese. Everybody's like, that's it, Spanish, Vietnamese. I have a couple of schools that have 8 to 9 African nations represented. So there's a little bit of Swahili, but a whole lot of French. I have schools in Keller. One of my schools in Keller has a bilingual immersion program, Vietnamese, English, pre-K through 5th grade. Because they have such a large Vietnamese population, they do 2 things. They teach those kids, they immerse them in English while they already know Vietnamese. They teach them Vietnamese and English. And they have Anglo kids and or Hispanic kids that come into that class to learn English, they already know, but learn Vietnamese alongside these kids. It's really cool. So ASL is one of those things I'd really love to learn. I already talk with my hand, so I can't imagine if I was trying to sign at the same time, that'd be a little tough, but we have a lot of parents like that. And what we do in schools, and you've done it in your program, is we ask the child to be the translator or the interpreter. And that's never a good thing. It's what we have to do sometimes, but it's never a good thing. It puts power in the hands of kids that they shouldn't have. So what I would invite you to do is get help with that language. So I got help with Vietnamese, and so I can count in Vietnamese when I do my math nights, try to do my greetings in Vietnamese, and which is very tough because it's tonal. But if I don't want to work on it, that's fine. But I got to find somebody that's going to help me with those parents. If I want to impact those parents in that language, we've got to have that. And yeah, Antec Indian, Spanish. I work in, or have done some work in the Lakota, Dakota area up in Montana. which is not, I mean, everybody speaks English up there, but some of these programs have to be, or should be, or could be done in the heart language. So we have a guy that is a Assiniboine that speaks Lakota and Dakota. And there's some real importance to that. There's some real importance to that as we do that. So think about, how are we helping with language? Also understand when you say Spanish, there's 27 different types of Spanish. So about the time you think you get it down, what kind of Spanish is being spoken in your neighborhood, in your community? And you guys have almost as many of those in your area. It's not just Mexican Spanish. It's Honduran, it's El Salvadoreño. Every once in a while you get some Spanish. And if you know the difference, you can tell Puerto Rican Spanish is much different sometimes. It reads the same, but it's pronounced much differently. This is a picture that I also love. This is our program in Irving ISD. I'm the white dude in the room. This is Asian and Hispanic parents, and the room's full. Because I hear people tell me that our Hispanic parents won't come, or that it all goes back to building that trust, and it all goes back to speaking that language, both the actual language, but more so the language of what these families are here for. And so as we talk about some of those challenges, we've got to look at that. So we're going to go to groups here in a second. I've got a thing I want you to do, but I want to see what our numbers look like real quick. Pull up participants. So we've got 21 participants. Put in chat real quick, and you told me kind of what you do. But if I said, what were you? Like, I am a speaker and facilitator, I guess would be the best way. If you're a caseworker, but if you're a child protective, if you're parenting, if you're, how do you describe yourself? The other thing is, and you can put this secondly, you can put it in again because some of you already typed it in. Put whether you're Buckner, if you're Buckner, because some of you are and some of you aren't. And I don't want to have a group of all Buckner people, because then you're not getting out and seeing what else is going on. By the way, I have not told you guys, Cindy, Jada, and Jeff for sure, that my office has a Buckner tie-in. My whole office was built in 2001 from reclaimed pallets, because I was cool a long time ago, right? I was so hip in 2001, reclaiming pallets, pre-Pinterest. But there was a guy here in town that built like hope chests and all these things. And so he would pull all the nails out of the pallets, glue all these boards together. Well, he bought all the woodworking equipment out of the big woodworking shop at the Buckners in Dallas when they changed out of that and took that out. And so he has like 24 and 36-inch planers. So he can make these huge panels. Like, I'll show you a picture of my desk later. But I thought that the other day, I thought, man, I'm down with Buckner. I got a desk made from equipment that was built, all the way back to the 40s probably. But so, so most of you, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through real quick. Let's see how that looks. And I want you to read what I have put here on the rules. So you're going to be put in a group, and you're going to respond to the questions that I put out. And this is coming from me, so you probably laugh. Make your answers brief. And we'll have a few rounds, because I want to kind of get you guys to talking about stuff. So let me. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven. All right. So you guys that got put in breakout room 1, we'll go there, and then let me assign. And then assign. There'll be 5 in one group, it looks like. So open all rooms, and you're invited to join that. And so you guys go to those rooms. And let me pull up first question. All right, so I'm in y'all's breakout room. Was there a question?
So what do you have as, what are we to be doing?
You had a question broadcast. Let me go back and broadcast that again.
Okay, I didn't see it.
All right. Can you see everybody else in your breakout room, Jada?
Well, I can see the boxes.
You guys got to unmute, guys. Do I need to
Unmute.
unmute everybody?
Yeah, need everyone to unmute. Okay, if COVID was over today, where would you want to go? On a cruise?
The idea that he said about having a time that fathers can attend, like our group connection, Shirley, you know, a lot of that is really still not scheduled for fathers to when they get off of work and stuff. So that might be something we could consider.
Would like a way to help them realize how to deal with some of their substance abuse that's getting in the way of all the things that they would do if they would be have the right head on them. It's a problem that gets in the way of dealing with the issues, because that is the issue.
I know Jada's doing some work with some of our local substance abuse programs. So yeah, you're right, David. We're back.
Like being yanked out of a time warp or something, isn't it? It's just like it was kind of powerful because it said, "Do you want to close the breakout rooms or not?" And I'm like, but if I do, everybody will come back, whether they like it or not.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
So let's see what we got. Did we lose everybody? We have 10 per 10. Oh, okay, they're coming back from group. They have about a minute, so they're like, I'm out. That was all I needed. There you go.
It's going up a little, no?
Yeah, they're coming.
Well,
The group.
probably at the end of the month. It
Oh.
changes at each month.
She's talking about something else. She didn't know we're listening.
You know, in August, it's going to change because you paid those off. So if you do it, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I didn't know if you knew you weren't on mute. Are we switching groups or are we in the whole
You're
group?
coming back. You're coming back.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just like, what just happened? Where did I go and how did I get back? And so yeah, it's an interesting deal. And even this is something to think about. So when we do our school program, dads go to classrooms, and then from the classrooms they come to the cafeteria. Well, when we say leave the class and come to the cafeteria because they're no longer with their kid, we lose about 20%, 15 to 20% just head out the door. Some guys, because they really do need to go to work at 8:45, 9 o'clock. Other guys, because they're afraid we're going to try to sell them something. They're just like, I'm not listening. They think it's a timeshare, or something. But we know that, and we have to deal with that, and we do everything we can to keep that in. But then when we do our other programs, like people say, well, you ought to do like a circuit. No, it cuts down on engagement. So even with what we're talking here, we've got 16 out of the 21 that were with us. Some people had to check out. But think about what that even means for your program of how are we doing things in such a way that, where we're losing people down the road, or we're losing people in that session. Now, when you have an ordered session, or, man, we do door prizes. I hate door prizes. Dad, Strong Fathers does not do door prizes because I want us to do things that make people want to be there because they want to be there. That being said, if you want to bring that, that's fine. But I find that it really kind of taints your work. And I'll give you an example. When we first started doing Head Start work, nobody thought dads would show up. So I called it turkeys and TVs. They seriously gave away frozen turkey to everybody that came to the November program. They had a drawing for like 4 TVs at Christmas. Well, what happens when that money dries up? Then 2 things happen. The people that didn't come because they thought your program sucked so bad that you got to give away TVs. So I don't think I want to sit through it. Or the guys that came because they just wanted to get the turkeys or the TV, quit coming when that money dried up. And none of us have that kind of money all the time. It shouldn't. As far as I'm concerned, you ought to have programs that help people that they want to be at because it helps people. You got to promote, you got to do some things. So think about that. So in your groups, guys, go ahead and unmute. I think we can handle that unless you've got trains or, 20 children in the background, or 2. Sometimes it just takes 1. But
It's a lot.
what did you learn? What did you learn about what somebody was doing that you didn't know they were doing? Like, did you find out about a service in your community that's for dads you work with that you didn't know about, or that you think we may need to talk about?
Well, I know one thing I found out, and this was actually on Buckner's campus, is that when they had a father-daughter dance here in town, I think it was through the schools, that they had folks that were helping get all the little girls ready and getting them dressed up and fixed up and ready to go on, that little date with dad. I thought that was very, very sweet.
That's awesome.
I like hearing about David Buchanan's Hope Clinic and the work they do with young dads with young babies, which was kind of neat.
Yep. Is David still on here?
Yep.
Yep.
I wasn't gridded up. I need to grid up. What else did you find out that's going on in your community you might not have known about before we had this conversation? Well, and I did pop in on you. Go ahead. Go ahead. Okay.
Just a little more of what Jada does, because I don't always know what everyone's position is or what they do. So you learn more about people this way, different people we work with in the community.
Yeah. Like, what do you do, Jada? Is that what you said? Okay. What do you even do?
I volunteered.
Yeah, well, sometimes, like I said, if people in the community are asking about that, that's okay. If your boss is asking that, that's a different question. But what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
What about in the discussion came up that you guys said, I wish we had that nobody said they had? You know what I mean? Where, like, what did you say we had a need for? I popped in on Jeff's group, and Jeff and David were talking about substance abuse, and that's a real issue, right? Definitely a real issue. Mm-hmm. And those services are limited, or they're limited sometimes. I don't know that they're limited for males, but they can be, or severity. Sometimes it's got to be where you've got to have such a severe situation. Whereas if you say, I've got a problem, but your problem's not, big enough, then somebody won't let you in, So anything that came out about that?
I think one of the things was about access, more access to job opportunities. We had the Texas workforce, but a lot of times what I've kind of heard from the men are, I go there and I kind of get frustrated because it's like I'm going to here and they're telling me do this and do that, but nobody's actually walking me through how do I do all these steps and processes.
Right. Take the paper and move. Yeah. Go ahead, Jeff. I'm sorry.
Yeah, red tape stuff. I mean, red tape's hard for anyone, but a dad who's in need sometimes is not very good at red tape.
Yeah, we were a part of the Tarrant County Fatherhood Coalition for when they started, and I kept going to meetings and we weren't doing anything, and they wanted to meet when I was having dad stuff, and I'm like, I can't come talk about working with dads because I'm busy working with dads, because they just want to talk. You know, I've been in coalitions and meetings like that, right? There's some where I've been involved in and they're really good, but it was that same thing. We were on a fatherhood resource booklet, and I get calls still on that booklet. Somebody finds it or gets it or gives it to them, and they say, I need help. What's going on? Well, I just got my kids. So, you know, I need to find childcare, or like you said, Jason, I need to find a job. And so I work with these programs. I have a couple of degrees. I've been in the field for a while, and I will call for this person and say, who do I need to talk to about this, this, and this? And I've talked to people at workforce that, are they a veteran? No. Well, we only serve veterans. I'm like, no, you don't. You don't just serve veterans at workforce. But that person I just serve veterans. Don't talk to. And I'm thinking, like you said, Jeff, what about the guy's just trying to find somebody to help him? And we've got that. And so it goes back to what we said earlier about being compassionate and empathic, if you will, to our constituents, that we know the challenges are there, right? I'm not coming in blowing rainbows at you like dads are wonderful and they got it all together. No, the reason we're doing the work with dads is because they need to get it together because they've got a huge job to do. The other thing is they want to get it together, but we've got to find ways to help. I think we've got to put if I want you to leave today with anything, is that we trust that these guys want better, but they don't always have the capacity to do that. And so it goes back to, what services do we need to have that are there? Part of my work in that coalition was they kept saying, but we've got to do things to reach at-risk dads. And what they meant was teen fathers, which I get, formerly incarcerated or formerly incarcerated fathers, undereducated or underemployed fathers. All those guys are at risk. But I said, what about the IBM dads and the EDS dads? And, you know, white collar dads are just about as much at risk for different things, but as a father, as far as how to connect to kids, right? Some of my blue collar guys that are working from job to job are some of the best fathers I work with. The fatherhood piece they've got down, right? And they're just trying to find a way to do a better job of supporting their families. But they coach their kids, or they're at the practices, or they're reading. They're doing what we would beg of a father to do, and it doesn't have anything to do with some of those other challenges. So here's what we hope to do and hope for you guys. We've got you on email. We're going to kind of send some stuff to you in the days to come, because I want to kind of follow up on this conversation. But you guys have, based on everything that we've seen over the last 3 weeks, we got a lot of people that want to do really good work for families in your county. And there's a lot of great resources there. Buckner, we got so many Buckner folks on this call. Buckner has some great services, but two things. Number one, the services that they have, they need to make sure they find people to serve, so you can help with that. The other thing is, you know, so bring people in that you may know that are in need of the services that Buckner provides through the EFFECT program or any other programs that they have. At the same time, they have families that they're working with, and they don't do everything. And so some of you guys, just like you talked about, learning about what David's doing, how do we get more teen dads hooked into that, or dads of young kids, right? Like, we're working on a program right now that we're going to do we're doing a video and a podcast for every month of development, 0 through 36 months. So if you sign up when your kid turns 4 months old, you get the video and the podcast for what to do with a 4-month-old. And so we're always trying to find opportunities for those resources. And yeah, that takes some money, but it doesn't matter if we get it paid for or not if nobody can access it. So one of the things we'll do is we'll kind of start somewhat of a little bit of a group chat as far as an email. It's not long term. You guys need to be doing that within your community, but we'll put it out and just make sure that everybody got resources, what's available. And from the group that's met with us over the last 3 weeks, and those that may be joining us to do the replay later, we want to get your information, because you guys are doing amazing work with families. We were here to help you hopefully improve what you're doing with fathers. That's, I think I said this the first week, Cindy, I'm an expert because I work in obscure natures. You know, I do what I do with dads, and honestly, what I do is there's not a lot of people doing it. So I've been doing it for 20 years. Hopefully I'm good at it. But I also learned from you guys to learn all the cool things that you're doing and to share those with other communities, and or what we do know that goes on in communities, we want to share that back with you guys. And so we want to continue that conversation. We know you've got a lot of other things to do, but we're going to try to find a few ways to do that without it being, too intrusive, and at the same time, hopefully very helpful. So Jeff, Cindy, Jada, I'm going to leave that with you guys if you have anything to say. And if we want to do questions, we can. But I think this group they're the cool kids that have shown up every week. And so I think hopefully we've answered their questions. And if you do have some more, we can look at another opportunity to answer those. But Jeff, I'll turn it over to you guys.
Sure. Just want to thank everyone for coming out and supporting us and just learning from Mike. Michael, thank you so much for what you do, and thank you for all the information you gave us. Thanks. Jada?
Yeah, I'm really appreciative of everyone that has come every Thursday. It is a big chunk of your time of the week to come and join us, and I'm hoping that you have gleaned some really good information. And if you're needing any assistance with a father or dad, reach out to me. Let's see what we can do together. And send them to my program.
Yeah, you get funded to do good work, to get people in to get work done. So all that ties together. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you guys. Like I said, we'll be in touch. I think we should have most of your emails. Also, we're going to find a way to put the replays up in case you need help getting to sleep at night. Or it's like, this guy was so confusing. What did he say? But also feel free to share those things. This is, this was built and paid for your community. And we want everybody in your community to get access to this if you felt it was good information.
Yes.
So we're going to kick the rest of you guys off. And I'm going to see if Cindy and Jada and Jeff, if you got a second with us, just kind of finish up real quick.
Yep. Thanks
Thank y'all.
everybody for participating.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate you.
Thank y'all. Thank you, Buckner.
Thanks, David. Bye.
See you, David. See you, Jennifer.